Okay, this is today's subject. Now this possibly is a little bit ambitious for a sketch. This is more of an Arty Improvers 2-hour session where you can get stuck into the details here because there's a lot going on. When I say there's a lot going on, there's a lot of interesting shapes in here. Now, as usual, we're going to split it down. We're going to start it. We always start off with our basic shapes. Now, the basic shape of a bonce is, of course, a sphere, a circle. And then that circle there describes the cranium. But down the front, what we tend to do if we're drawing a head or a face or a portrait is we put a kind of shield down the front, a curved plane, so that you're looking at the very, very basic shapes of a face or a head or a portrait are those, a sphere and a kind of shield which forms the face. So that is where we're going to start with this. And then what we're going to concentrate on are the values. And when I say the values, I mean the lightness and the darkness, because that is what's describing the form of this skull. The light's coming from the left, kind of above down here. It's lighting the face and it's casting a shadow on the ground, but it's creating form shadows in all these little dents and indentations. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. We're going to try and work. We're not going to bother too much about the color. We're not going to bother too much about the texture, although there are some really nice little surfaces on here. We're just going to focus on the value, which is the lightness and the darkness. And we're going to see if we can create a realistic form by simply using light and dark. Okay, let's have a bash. Let's get cracking. So, into the sketchbook. This doesn't feel quite right. Just bear with me. Okay. Tools of the trade today are, I'm just going to use that. I'm just going to use a pencil. And remember our basic shapes. Remember we were working with a sphere and we are working with that kind of shield down the front. Let's see if we can get those in. Let's start. Let's get that sphere in. I'm going to get hung up on this. I'm not going to get too paranoid about the perfectness of a circle or just how everything's going to look in the right place. So that's our sphere, that's our circle. We're going to start off as a circle. It's a circle until we add tone and value to it. Then it becomes a sphere. The sphere is three-dimensional. The circle's flat. So we've got a circle here. And then, you know, I was talking about that kind of shield that goes down the front, which again, that's going. Okay, got a malfunction here. Yeah, that's better. So, can you see I've got a sphere here and I've got a shield shape here, and I'm trying to now describe these in 3 dimensions. So if we look at that eye line, that we've got to remember that I'm putting some construction marks in here. I'm kind of doing this automatically without explaining what I'm doing, but I'm kind of putting in some contours to describe what's going on here in this skull. So this is like an equator going around the cranium, and on the equator sits these eye sockets. So that's a useful little guideline. Now I'm going to put in a line that comes down the middle of that shield, because on that line there sits the nose, or what's left of the nose when it's returned to this form. So can you see I've got that equator around there, and I'm going to start putting in the features. So on this equator that runs around the cranium, I can put that eye socket, which is hidden behind this, the bridge of this nose here. And then I'm kind of eyeballing the distances between the two. And I'm going to put this other eye socket in here. And I'm looking, okay, that edge of that eye socket is kind of halfway round the old sphere, isn't it? You know, if one edge of the sphere is there and the other's there, that edge of that eye socket is pretty much halfway, which kind of brings it down here. So we can get him in. And we can see that it's on the same level as that. So I'm feeling my way around this scaffolding that I've created, and I'm putting in the features. Now there's a cheekbone here that lines up with the bottom of the nose hole, for want of a better word. So I'm just going to scoot around and I'm just putting in these bits of skull where I'm finding them. And I come down here and I get to the jaw. Right, now this jaw, it's not just a line, it's a line that follows a space. It's a line in space. So just to give myself a few reference points, I'm just going to drop in that cheekbone, which is on the same level as this cheekbone. So I can come across here like this. And I'm getting everything in the right place. And I can see now that that jaw and that mouth is coming down here. And you see it as a kind of link everything together. It's starting to take shape. I've put in these foundation lines, probably a little heavier than I would have done normally, but I've done that so that you can see them. Right, we've got a chin that comes down there. Let's get back to this teeth line, because it's not just a line between the top teeth and the bottom teeth. It's a line that describes where it's going in space. So it kind of, it rolls round and into there like that. And then the top half of the teeth, you know, the top bit does the same, and that describes the way that rolls around and back into there. And that there creates the jawbone, which joins up to this bit here. And all the little bits are starting to take shape. And you can see in here, absolutely fascinating when you look inside what's going on inside your head. And all these little joints and crevices. So that bit goes there, and then there's another bit that kind of goes into there. He comes around there like so. And that's pretty much it. Now, you know, early on I was saying, okay, we're trying to make this about value. Obviously here, I haven't put any value in here yet. This is starting to look three-dimensional because of these contour lines that I've drawn. There's no shading, there's no light and dark on here yet. We're going to try and do that with paint. So I'm just going to get in a nice outline. Because this is important, you know, look at the way that eye socket goes back in there, and then you've got this brow bone. These are all very distinctive skull-like features. Of course, you know, the circle that I drew, it's only a guide. It isn't an exact sphere. Look at it, it's got bumps and mounds, and there's an awful lot going on in the skull. And I'm trying to get that in with the quality of the line as well. You know, I'm making it wobble a little bit, and I'm making it interesting. Okay, So what I could do, I could rub out a few of these kind of guides that I've put in. And maybe lose a bit of that shield that let me know where the face was originally. I don't have to, I can let these show through, but you don't want too much graphite underneath your painting because it can smudge. Right, let's see what we can do with some paint now. So, essentials are your tissue, and I'm not going to worry too much about the colour. So what I will do is spritz this. Get those all nice and juicy, ready to go. Right, so as I was saying, we are looking at the values here. Now look down there, that is solid black. And look how that black comes around here. This is not a great, you're not seeing a lot of detail in here. You're just pretty much seeing 2 or 3 values. You're seeing the very high white of these bones that are facing the light. And then you're seeing this very deep shadow here. So I'm not going to bother too much about the color. And I'm not going to bother too much. Well, I am actually. I was going to say I'm not going to bother too much about the consistency of the paint. I'm just going to lay in some dark color. But this is a good opportunity to practice your value control. Now, obviously, if I've got a thin, watery wash like I've got here, when I put in this color here, it's going to be thin. It's going to be light. The paper's showing through the dilute water. So what I'm doing, I'm going to put in this wash to start off with, and I'm doing it quickly. And look how I'm letting the colors mingle as well, because that's already starting to look interesting. But you see the way that shadow gradually gets lighter and comes into the light there. That is a soft edge, and I want a soft edge there. So I wash my brush, I dab it off, and I paint with clean water. And that creates a soft edge. So it goes from dark to light. Here, we've got a hard edge. Can you see that crispy little? You can't very well, but there are hard edges in here as well, which I want to keep hard. So that is where I go in with a strong color on dry paper. And when it's against dry, it stays, the edge is crisp and hard. So this is a big exercise of soft and hard edges. And that's something that we need to focus on here. So for example, to create that 3D effect of being spherical, as the light hits the front and as the shadow creeps round, these little bits here, you see there and there, these are soft edges. That's a soft edge. As it gently, as the shadow comes around into the light, it does it gradually, and it does it with a gradient. So let's make a feature of that. Let's try and put in most of the dark. So I'm going in with the blue there. I know that brown neutralizes blue, so I'm quite enjoying mixing these browns and these blues together. So as this jawbone comes around here, I'm going to clean my brush, dry it off, and just soften that edge. And I'm going to try and do that all the way around, so that if I squint at this, I can see where the light and the darks are. So I'm just going to start putting in. See that side of the nose there's in shadow. So we're going to darken him down there. There's a hard edge on there, so I want that. I'm painting that on dry paper. Down in here, the top of the jaw there to that side of the nose, that is in shadow, but then this is all soft. The transition between the light and the dark is soft there, so I'm trying to make that apparent with the paint. All in here is all very dark. Inside the nostrils, all very dark in there. I do actually want to try and keep a little line there, a little white line, which I may have lost. I'm just trying to pull that out. Doesn't matter, it's not the end of the world. Inside this eye socket, it's quite a pale shadow, but it's shadow nonetheless. Let's get a bit more color. I'm using brown and I'm using blue. They're two complementary colors. So together they make a neutral gray. So now I've got that brow ridge. I'm just putting a brow ridge in there. And now, can you see I've got this white area where the light's hitting. I'm now going to build up these dark areas. And I'm going to do that by using a stronger mix of paint. And when I say stronger, I mean a thicker one. Obviously, there's less water, the pigment to water ratio. There's more paint than water. So now I can start to work into these really dark shadows in here. Yeah, I can start to look at this bone here. Hopefully this has dried off and I can come in here and say, okay, with these dark pigments, so, you know, if necessary, I can go straight into the paint in the tray there and use the pigment straight from the tray. And that's just going to make me a really nice dark. And I can start to put in some really dark values here. Just look at that there. I mean, there's still soft edges in here. There's still transition. So if I do want to soften that edge, I can always come in with clean water and create a path for the paint to go in. I'm going to put in a few, I'm not painting the teeth in, I'm painting in the gaps between the teeth. This is only a sketch, remember. So I'm not getting too careful. These are interesting, these bony ridges where the roots of the teeth go into the top jaw. They're quite skull-like, aren't they? That says skull. Haven't really defined the inside of this nose cavity very clearly. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do that with a bit of more stronger pigment. That's good. Maybe put a little bit more in there. Again, soften it out. Right, this is obviously too light down the back there. Look how dark it is here. We need to get some good, strong color in there. So let's take this right down. At the same time, we can define that. Jawbone. Interesting stuff going on in there. I'm going to splat it because there's great texture in here that I'm not really utilized. So I'm just dabbing and I'm trying to create areas of interest with a bit of tissue. You can see through into the back of the underside of the cranium or something in here. So I wonder if we can just take a bit of that out. And that gives that a bit more texture. Probably make this jawbone a little more interesting here. So that's starting to look three-dimensional. I'm quite pleased with that. Nice to get some cast shadow on the ground. It's floating in air at the moment. Let's try and ground it. When I say ground it, I mean let's just give it something to sit on. And also this kind of edge here, this is white. So let's maybe define the edge of the skull by doing a little bit of negative painting here. Let's come around there like that. And make the side of this face stand out by giving it a background. Soften that up into nothing. So I can see now I need to carry that shadow on upwards as well. Look, see, I've kind of neglected that shadow up there. Maybe introduce a bit more of that. Got some nice colors happening in here. So now when I squint at this and I squint at that, I can see this is still too light. This cheekbone should be more in shadow. So I'm just lowering the value by adding paint. I can see more detail in here than you can on the screen. So that's why I'm kind of playing around in here with colors and values. Hopefully if you download this picture, you'll be able to see more detail, because you could really get stuck into this and spend a lot of time enjoying what's going on in this skull. And you know, it's a bit like life drawing. There's an awful lot you can discover, and there's an awful lot to learn in terms of controlling the paint and working out how things work. See here, there's a little kind of bone down here. I don't know if you can see it, this thing here. I don't know what it's called, but I'm trying to make it visible here, and I'm lifting off a bit of paint in there. Come in with a pencil and redefine a few lines, because obviously lines are a crucial part of any drawing. I like the way the socket goes down into the depths there. I've kind of lost this edge here, so I'm going to try and bring back a few crisp edges. So I'm making up a mix. I'm just mixing that brown and that blue. And I'm just going to try I'm just going to go around and bring out a few crisp hard edges. There's one here, there's one there. And when I say crisp hard edges, I mean edges that aren't going to soften on wet paper. The darkest of the darks. I'm just putting those in with really good, strong pigment. Because you want a full range of values. When I say the darkest of the dark, you know, you want a range of values that go all the way from white right down to black, or as black as you can get. Not necessarily black. We don't tend to, well, I don't tend to use much black in these watercolors. I tend to darken down my colors with complementaries. Let's see, that goes in there. That's kind of all right down there. You'll still see now when I squint, maybe this jawbone needs to disappear into the shadows a little bit more. So I'm just going to get a wash. I think this white line down here might be a little bit misleading. So just a little wash over there and that'll lose that. What else is happening now? Okay, so that's quite nice there. That's good there. This brow line could possibly be exaggerated a bit. It's a bit strong. So all I do, if it's a bit strong, just go in, clean my brush and lift off any paint that might be too much. I think we're nearly there, you know. You could spend a long time getting stuck into this, and I think it'd be a very worthwhile exercise to really enjoy exploring this. You know, download this image. It's up on my, well, it's up on the email that I sent you. And really get lost in all these hollows and valleys and peaks, and there's all kinds of stuff to explore here. So yeah, I think that's, so if I'm just squinting at this and I'm squinting at that and looking at this, my eyes are dancing between the two. I can see that's a little weak zone there. Look, that and that needs refining. We can do that. Maybe just grab a little bit of strong pigment, mixing the blue and the black, the blue and the brown together. Actually, no. There's that hard edge there. You see that hard edge? It's kind of back of your temple bone. I don't want to lose that, but what I've got here is I've got my hard edge and then it's in full light, it's too bright. So I'm not looking for a strong mix. I just want a little wash. I just need, so we're kind of, we're shadowy over here. And then I'm just bringing that wash down around that eye socket. That's what I need to do there. And you know, you can go around this, go around a painting like this for a long time, just correcting and refining the values. It's the values we're looking at. It's the values that we're paying attention to. So squint, and where you see that the values are darker, just pop in a bit of color. That's what I'm doing now. I'm just going around, trying to find little areas of shadow that are either too light. If they're too dark, you can always lift off with a little bit of a scrub. See, I'm looking here now, there's kind of a little hint of shadow in here. And you can spend valuable time just, let's see if we can get these teeth a little bit more defined. You don't want to ruin it because it's nice to just leave a suggestion, just suggest the teeth. Don't try and draw in every one. You can if you want, but you'll probably come a cropper. It's nice just to say, okay, there's a hint of a tooth there. That goes around there. Because of course, your imagination can do a far better job of making up what should be there than you can with your brushes and paints. Just going to give those a little hint of yellowness, a little kind of touch of ivory onto these teeth. It's quite nice. Front of his chin's possibly a little bit bleak. Let's just get a little bit of something going in there. It's too strong. Dab it off. But it leaves just a little residue of interest. Too strong. Dab it off. Okay, I think that's about there. Could possibly get a little bit more shadow going on down here. And as the light's kind of hitting the front of his face, it'll probably cast a shadow down back behind there like so. I just want to lose that hard edge by painting up to it with water. Down here, it gets very, very dark. So I'm just going straight into my paint palette, not my palette, my tray here, getting pure pigment, that's pure blue in there. So for the very, very darkest bits, it's just pure pigment. Right underneath here, right inside the head, where it's very dark. So now I've got a full range. I'm practically black down here. And I'm white over the front. So look, you can see we've got real depth inside there. You can go right inside that skull and get lost. That's what I mean by you've got the full range. You've got black over here, white over here. Full range of values is going to give you the maximum impact. The best way to create the illusion of 3 dimensions. Right. I could play with this for a while, but I'm not because time's up, I think. So, yeah, it wasn't morbid at all, was it? Let's have a closer look. Look at that. That's just splashes of paint. But what we have achieved is we got the values down. We've got a really strong feeling of light and dark. We've got a strong feeling of light coming down there. So it's a study. It's well worth getting stuck into this and spending a bit more time on it, but that's a nice little study to do. Skull, people, humans, that you cannot get a more fascinating and challenging subject. Right, I hope you enjoyed that. And I am going to say, I'm going to wave you bye-bye. I can just do this. That. Right, there we are. Wasn't too depressing, was it?
No, it was great.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
It was nice, wasn't it?
Right.
I enjoyed doing that. So
Interesting.
really interesting. You can't beat the human figure for challenging subject matter. You can get stuck into that. You could spend a day drawing that, and it'd be really rewarding in terms of what you'd learn and the skills you'd acquire, the way you know, manipulating hard edges and soft edges and working out where the light and the shade and the way the forms roll around and what makes things round and how to make things look sharp and so on and so forth. So yeah, I encourage you to have another bash at that if you've got the time and the inclination. Meanwhile, I will see you arty improvers tomorrow, and have a great day. See you all next week.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. See you later. Bye-bye. Bye.